Tyler, this is the second interview in a row where we should probably both take notes. I am already. We were just talking with Ashley Russo from ASR Media, who is awesome and was giving. She was kind of telling us some stuff that she was doing, so I'm like, "Yep, that's a good idea." And we're here now with Josh Rultenberg. Did I get that right?
You did.
The second time.
Yeah.
And we're gonna get into what you're formerly of WFMZ, which people would know around here. But where are you with right now? And you can kind of tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So still currently I'm unemployed as far as paid gigs are concerned, but I'm using a lot of my time right now to help out a local cancer nonprofit called Every Ribbon Counts. One of your guests that you just had on.
Yep, we had her on.
Abby Silfies. Her and Susan Bostian started this in 2019. And basically, they've been helping to try and stomp out every bit of cancer, all different types. And so one area that they said that they just needed help on was the online communication and just kind of telling stories for them. And so I said, that's kind of my level of expertise, and I have plenty of time on my hands. So this is where I can help you out. And
right.
So yeah.
And that's awesome. And we'll include Abby was great. And we'll include all the information in there. And now I'm interested because we were talking about Alabama right before we were like, okay, let's go to record. So now tell the people who are listening a little bit about where you're from and how you got to where you are now. And I think we'll find some stuff in there that's interesting. So go ahead.
Yeah. So, I graduated. I'm originally from Montgomery County, which is actually where I am now. I'm temporarily.
What high school? What high school did you go?
Plymouth Whitemarsh.
Ooh.
You know
that?
Yeah. It's a basketball powerhouse.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
We used to play them I went to Nazareth. We used to play them in summer league, and we didn't do well.
I was going to say it probably didn't go well for you.
Is there a nickname for Plymouth Whitemarsh? It seems like they're a mouthful to say.
We call them PW.
PW.
What's the mascot?
We are the Colonials.
Makes sense. It's a very that does. Yeah. I can just see the summer league jerseys now. Scoring 30 points against me.
We've had some NBA players who've walked through the building, so things have gone well. But so I'm originally from Montco, and didn't really know the direction business-wise after high school, but instead I took a year off and was training to be a professional tennis player. Actually moved to Tampa, Florida, and was playing 40 hours of tennis a week.
So wait, were you how good were you in high school? No BS, legit.
Yeah, so I was number one on my team, and number two. It kind of went back and forth with me and my buddy. But I was playing in local tournaments and did some international travel as well. So I was taking it pretty seriously. Who knows if I would have ever made it, but my body really wasn't ready for me to play 40 hours a week. And so that's kind of where it all got shut down. Ended up coming back up to the Northeast. And, one random day I was on the tennis court at PW, and this 6'5", tall guy walks onto the court. He's by himself. And, I recognized him, but I didn't know who he was. And you could tell he was just learning how to play tennis. And so I was like, hey man, you want to play, whatever. 15 minutes in, I'm like, hey, wait a minute. You're that sports guy that's on TV in Philly, aren't you? And he says, yeah, I am. And it turns out I don't know if you know the name, John Clark.
Yeah.
So John Clark.
Yeah. So John was just learning how to play tennis, and I just happened to be out there by myself. Long story short, I was kind of like, what you do for a living is pretty cool. And he's like, all right, well, I'll make a deal with you. If you teach me how to play tennis, I'll teach you about the business. And we end up becoming fast friends. And
then that's the beginning of like a weird Adam Sandler movie.
I'm telling you, man, the guy was like, he's like, 15 years older than me. And we just struck up a friendship. And,
if we're going to make a parallel to Happy Gilmore, you're the Chubs. I got to tell you, you're the Chubs in this.
It's all in the hips. It's all in the hips. So I was trying to tell him. And the funny thing is John would be the perfect Adam Sandler character too, because he had such a temper on the tennis court.
I can't say who this is.
Yeah.
But my buddy has the best story about Shooter McGavin.
Sure.
McGavin. Whoever the actor is, like he was at Lehigh one night and they got like totally had a crazy night, and it was all with Shooter, and it was just like one of those surreal things that it'll never happen again. You know?
But I could totally see John, on a mini golf course going up to the guy and, smacking the thing, why wouldn't you go in your, your home or whatever? You think that's funny, clown?
Yep.
So you get into broadcasting.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I'm at Temple, I applied for 181 jobs, and I was just like, the first place that's going to put me on TV, I'm going to go.
So you counted.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a lot of jobs to apply for. Yeah.
It's one of those weird things where you're like, why not? What else do I have better to do than to keep track of the jobs that I apply for? And
what were some of the markets? Like, what were some?
So I got my first offer to actually be on TV while I was still in school. It was at Temple. It was at a place called Temple, Texas. Small town. It was crazy because I went to Temple.
Yeah.
And, I had some people in my life who were like, hey, man, these TV jobs don't come around all that often. You might need to take this and just, not graduate.
Yeah.
I contemplated it. But in the end, my parents were like, look, you got 3 months left. Just graduate.
Yeah.
Also applied to Alpena, Michigan, which I think is the lowest market there is in the country.
So you were pretty mad at your parents after like 160th job rejection. You're like, I should have took that job, Mom. I should have.
Like Temple, Texas is looking pretty good. I was just looking at it.
I mean, the crazy thing about it is like, I'm just learning this about the other industries that are around, but in TV, you don't get rejections. You just get ghosted.
Yeah.
They don't tell you you're not qualified or we have other people because they have a million people applying for the jobs.
Yeah. Right. They can't just.
So yeah, I didn't hear back from a lot of them at all. So then finally, I graduate in May, and I'm like, all right, the first one, I'm out. And I get this phone number with a 334 area code, and it's a place called Dothan, Alabama. I'm sure you've never heard of it.
No.
It's the southeast corner, so right on the Florida-Georgia line. And the guy was just like, yeah, we're interested. We want you to be our sports guy. How fast can you get here? And I was like, dude, I'll be there by the end of next week. And took off, didn't know a thing about it. Drove down there with my dad. And my dad was like, you really want me to drop you off here?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah.
How do native Dothonians pronounce Dothan?
It's Dothan.
Yeah.
Or
okay.
Down there with the southern accent, it's Dothan.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's for those that don't know, it is the peanut capital of the world.
Okay. All right. Yeah, now we're talking.
They have the National Peanut Festival.
How did they accept you as a northerner with your accent? Was it weird? Could people sniff you out right away?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, I was a Yankee. Everybody calls me a Yankee. I learned
down there.
Yeah, you see it?
Yeah.
Look at that. Yeah, man. There's actually a Bible phrase that they put on the front of their papers that apparently there was something that said, and God said, let us go to Dothan. That's it right there. That's it.
All right.
That's the arena right there, the Civic Center.
What sports were you covering? Is there a pro team down there?
Well, so that's a trick question. So I was covering Alabama and Auburn football.
Okay. Which
you might as well call a pro sport.
Right.
Yeah, this is it, man. It's downtown.
That's rough.
Oh man,
No offense to Dothan, I'm sure it's beautiful.
No, honestly, I've had 4 jobs here in broadcasting. It was my favorite experience because you're this 22-year-old kid paying all your bills, at least for me, for the first time, and life was so slow that I think if I was up here in the Northeast in like a New York City or a Philadelphia, I would have gotten eaten alive. And so it was really cool.
They're like, Josh, that cat is stuck in the tree again. It's 2 times. This is a crazy
alligator race.
Let me tell you the craziest thing that happened while I was down there. And you might know of it because it was a national story. So back in February, I believe 2012, there was a kid that was taken into an underground bunker by a man who boarded a school bus and held him hostage for 7 days. Did you guys hear this story?
No, I mean, maybe.
It was a crazy story. A guy who had PTSD, mid-60s, takes a special needs kid and puts him, there it is, right there. That's it. Jimmy Lee Dykes, he took little Ethan. And so this is crazy because I'm a sports guy at the time, and we have a really small newsroom. And you can even Google if you want. You could Google Josh Rultenberg, CNN. First time I ever did news, I was sitting in my car at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's the one right next to it. Go backwards. See it right there? I'm on the phone with them. Soledad O'Brien. I had no idea who she was, first off, at the time. But my boss was like, yeah, we need you to do news tonight. We're out of resources. And little do I know, it ends up being this national story, and I'm getting phone calls from family and friends being like, oh my gosh, you're on CNN for news right now? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But it was my first taste, and eventually that's how I knew I could go back and do news. But yeah, I was on the phone right
Josh,
there.
where are we now in this hostage standoff?
When I had hair.
Well, I can tell you that as of this morning, the suspect, Jimmy Lee Dykes, and his 6-year-old hostage are still held up in that underground bunker on Dykes' property in Dale County. Authorities say even though the child is still being held, he is physically okay.
No reason.
One law enforcement official indicated to us earlier that the little boy has special needs and is perhaps autistic. As of now, the FBI is in charge of the operation, which has now been going on for over 12 hours.
Yeah, so it was nuts. I mean, so I'll tell you, I was on scene there, and we had the media. We were across the street, middle of nowhere. And I had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. And the only place you can go to the bathroom is this church that's right across the street. And
with the guy's house, and he's probably not letting you in, right?
Right.
So, the guy's house,
coming to my bunker.
He was like 500 yards away, but the FBI is set up across the street, like full tactical, all this stuff. And you got guys, with guns and everything. And I'm like, man, how do I walk across the street right now and ask them to go to the bathroom?
Yeah.
And so I did. And literally, you got a guy, with semi-automatic rifle. And I'm like, hey, man, look, hands up. I come across wearing credentials. And I'm just like, all I'm trying to do is go to the bathroom.
Like what's the alternative is to try to do that across the street and they get really mad at you. Like, this is the last thing you need.
So it was nuts. But, so that was one of the craziest things that happened when I was down there. Luckily, the kid made it out alive.
And you were 22.
22. Yep.
So what, not to dwell on that story, but, were you too green to even understand the magnitude, or
Absolutely.
Were you nervous?
No. No, I wasn't nervous to be on because, first off, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was so tired. I had actually just gotten back from a trip from Disney World, but I was so tired that I was barely having it register. And they're like,
and this is just by circumstance was the reason you're there, because they were a little short on a news guy.
That's it. We, I don't know if you guys know the term wall to wall, but it's basically where there's no commercials and you just do straight news. And we did that all night that night. And at the end of it, everybody's exhausted. And my boss just turns to me because there was no sports that night. And he just says, Josh, you're up. All I need you to do is go sit out there. Don't do a thing. He tells me, don't do a thing. Just call me if something happens.
Was this story already going on? Was this already?
Yeah, it was going on since 4 o'clock that afternoon.
Okay, your boss, does your boss have to sign off on you going on CNN, or does he get a phone call and he's like, God damn it, they let Josh go on CNN?
So you're right. You're right on both of those accounts. Typically, I would have had to have probably gotten permission to do it. But the way I went about it is I called CNN myself.
Oh, you got to shoot your shot, Tyler.
Yeah. I mean, I'm telling you. So
hello, this is CNN.
Right. So here's how, so I was working for the ABC affiliate at the time down there. And there was a girl next to me in a car who was working for the CBS affiliate. And she's on the phone with CBS News in New York. And I'm like, how are you doing this? And she's like, oh, they called me, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, forget that. I'm going to call ABC News in New York. So I call them, and they're like, yeah, do you need anything? And they're like, yeah, I have video. I can give you video. And they're like, nah, we got video. We're okay.
Like, we're good. Just go away, please.
So I'm sitting there, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, I'm tired. I got to do something right now. I'm going to pass out. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just calling CNN in Atlanta. Call them. And I'm like, hey, have you guys heard about this situation?
Wait. Who do you call? Do you call, the receptionist?
What? I Google CNN news desk.
And he'd call the news. All right.
Call him. Hey, guys, you know what's going on here? No, what's going on? X, Y, and Z. Wait a minute, really? Yeah. I'm here right now. Oh, well, can you do a phone interview for us at 5 o'clock in the morning? Well, sure. What else I got better to do? So I can tell you, I did 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 a.m. top of the news. Boston.
You're like, yeah, I'll call you. I just got to go pee in this church real quick, and then I'll be ready to do it.
Luckily, I did that beforehand. But
call Josh. He's in the church bathroom. Yeah. Right, we go live.
Yeah, why is there an echo?
Why are you so quiet? Why can't you talk loudly?
But
what is that organ?
So I end up going to work, like, half dead the next day because all I did was that. And I go in, and my boss is like, so I heard you were on CNN.
He wasn't angry.
Wait, wouldn't that be something you would let him know? Like, there was no communication?
I mean,
you're running rogue down there in Alabama.
I mean, all he said was wake me up if something happens. And technically, nothing was happening across the street. Everybody was just, they were changing shifts.
Oh, you're that guy. Yeah.
I'm just saying. I don't want to wake him up for anything that wasn't too serious.
Yeah. And they're like, well, today you're going to go interview the Alabama mascot. Is that okay for us to switch the story? But it's got to be hard to go back then to like a kind of a mundane sports story when you're, got your adrenaline pumping.
I mean, this is how naive I am.
Well, do you see like the other sportscasters, like when you're at a basketball game and you're like, you try to look like extra tough because you're like, yeah, man, I was at that thing,
I mean, first off, everybody has an ego to some point that's on TV. Don't kid yourselves. That's why we're on TV and not writing newspapers,
Yeah.
But I mean, naive 22-year-old kid that I am, I'm saying, oh my gosh, this is my big break. I'm out of here next week. CNN's calling me. They're going to be like, we love you. Come report on the White House.
You're not paying bar tabs in downtown Dothan. You're like, I'm out of here.
I mean, honestly, it was nuts. And I honestly thought that was my ticket out, but it wasn't. And yeah, it was a little crazy to go back to just nothing. I mean, you do sports, but nothing like that.
Yeah. But did that kind of, you said earlier that it let you know that you could do news, but did it give you the taste that you wanted to do news?
Yeah. I mean, the other naive part is like all news is like that.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing sports, but all news is that crazy. So I'm like, yeah, it let me know that I could do it. And it kind of just piqued my curiosity at that point. So where I finished up in Dothan and I was without a job for about 3 weeks when a college buddy of mine calls and says, there's this news/sports role that my boss is trying to create in Albany, New York. Would you be interested? And I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? And I ended up getting the job and basically reported on news for a year and a half before I got promoted back to being the weekend sports anchor for 2 years. So I got to do both and I learned a ton. End up going from there to Westchester, New York for 6 months to report in the middle of the night for a 24-hour news network before I end up working for FMZ for 2 years. So yeah, it's been a crazy ride.
And then, I mean, I don't want to get too much into it. So you're not with FMZ anymore. You're kind of on the market. Do you find, is that part of the nature of the beast in this industry? I don't know it that well. So
yeah, most of us are on contracts. I would probably say a good portion of people are on contracts. Standard for the media is either 2 or 3 years. I was on a 2-year deal. I was.
That's gotta be. I couldn't do that, man.
It's hard.
That's stressful because they can. Yeah.
Well, we had Alex Hogan was on our podcast, and we're
friends. We're buddies.
Her schedule was like, dude, how do you do this?
You're not. There are some times I look at because I know I'm friends with some people who are, and you kind of look at them as like they're in a different world almost because
it's nuts.
They're always tuned in. They're waking up, like Tyler just said. They're waking up at 2 a.m. To start the day.
Well, only she did that. There's no chance of me. I was up at 9:30. Let's not kid ourselves. I worked 1 p.m. to 10:15 p.m. So
but even that's a shift.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I worked second shift once in my life. I could never sleep.
It's hard. Like, people are saying, like, what time do you go to bed? I'm like, I go to bed at like 2 o'clock in the morning. They're like, really? I'm like, well, if you work 9 to 5, does that mean you go to bed at 6 p.m.?
Yeah. Right.
No, it takes a while to unwind.
But then you have nothing to do. But you're not doing it. Like, when you get off of work at 5, you have like 5 to 9 where you eat dinner and you hang out. When you get off work at 10, like, what do? You know what I mean? Like,
you're watching TV, you're watching Sports Center, you're doing whatever, and you're doing all the stuff that everybody does, after work. I have to do that before work.
You're heading to Molly's. See that plug?
But
there you go.
So, are you still looking? You want to get back into a newsroom?
It's interesting. I have had a little bit of time now to decompress, because I would definitely call that a good word. I'm not entirely, let's say this, I'm open-minded right now. I'm definitely exploring things both in and outside the industry. One thing that we did with WFMZ is we signed non-compete agreements. So we can't work within an 85-mile radius of Allentown for 1 year after our contracts are over. So that's 336 more days right now. But who's counting?
We just talked to Ashley Russo. We talked a little bit about local news, and in general, news, at least in my lifetime, this is the hardest time to be news, I would think, right? What do you attribute that to? And do you think that, the big dogs like CNN, Fox, the way everything gets politicized, do you think that people are going to start, going back to their local news affiliates?
I could tell you right now, right before I left the station, our general manager had sent out a station-wide email, and he basically had said that right now, and obviously the pandemic had a lot to do with it, but he had said that our numbers are as high as they've been in a very long time. And that's because, of this pandemic, that we're right in your backyard and you're so worried about stepping outside that you have to rely on people like us who are still going outside to give you the information. And so right now, local news is very crucial.
Yeah.
And I can say that as not being in it right now.
Yeah, yeah.
As far as it being hard, yeah, it's very hard to be in the media right now. You've had this wave of people calling certain organizations fake news. And that is honestly, it feels like when somebody spits in your face, because, you do all this hard work and you put everything into it. And for somebody who doesn't agree with it, just to call it fake because they don't want to believe it.
I think it's funny too. Well, you talk about being a young reporter. There's the reporters out there writing these articles. Not all of them are, Pulitzer Prize winners. And they are not sitting there writing something and they're like, I'm writing this with an agenda. I mean, right. I do agree that there are agendas, but it's not like this rampant thing where it's like every news article. It's just ridiculous. So
yeah,
I agree.
To touch on, Tyler, what you were saying, definitely the national networks have their own agendas. I mean, that's clear as day. But we all get grouped together. At some point, somebody decided that all of us were going to be called the media. But it's so unfair because, the local people, we just have jobs to do.
Right. And I don't know if you can answer this or how you feel about it, but breaking news, like we're such in a rush to get the first taste of the story, where sometimes the race clouds up the actual message, right? Like a breaking news story, like I'm less interested in the first person to get there than more info. You know what I mean? So is there a push to get there first? And where does that even come from?
It comes from the competition.
Yeah.
I mean, so just to put it in perspective with WFMZ, we're technically considered the Philadelphia market, but we're not really the Philadelphia market. I mean, the competition that we would compete with every day was the morning call. And, our bosses would heavily stress that, we need to be better than the morning call, and we need to beat them, and we need to have better sources in different places. But yes, I completely understand the frustration that you would have. It's always better to be right than to be first. That is definitely something that we did stress there. But you want to win. It is a competition. It's a race, and you better, if you're going to come out with it first, you better be right.
Right.
So that's why we double and triple check everything before we put it out there. But yeah, it's a race for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But it's funny, like news, like sometimes you're competing also with people on Facebook, right? Like it's hard to compete with somebody that was a bystander that can also reach as many with being able to share things on Twitter and Facebook. It's hard to even be there before that, right? So how often are you kind of getting there and like getting the story or having to share info that's already been put out by just some guy that was actually at the store that's getting robbed too?
Yeah, absolutely. That happens all the time, happens daily. The reporters and journalists that were in the business, 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, didn't have the same challenges that people do today. You're absolutely right that everybody to a certain extent is a journalist. Yeah. To a certain, and I say that to a certain extent because everybody likes to think that just because they see it on TV, they can do it better.
Yeah.
But that's not true.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of times where we will see, look, I'll tell you, here's something you guys would know about.
Well, it's really not true. Have you seen our television show? You'll definitely see what happens. Go on our YouTube, watch an episode of that. I'll make you feel better.
There's no sources. Usually we make up the characters on the show. So
the facts don't even matter.
But I'm sure you get a ton of clicks.
Sometimes.
For the record, we're not news. I don't know if anybody's listening that needs that to be cleared up. Me and George Wacker are not news at all.
I got you.
Yeah, what were you saying? You had a kind of.
Sorry.
Well, no. So I'll just tell you. So one instance where you talk about a viewer video that was huge, and it one that happened right in the Lehigh Valley. If you guys remember the South Whitehall police officer that was just on trial.
Yeah.
For shooting an unarmed man. I was on that story that day, and I can remember being called out to the hotel right across the street from Dorney Park. And there's a guy in the lobby who shows me his phone, and he's like, "Hey, take a look at this." And it, there's not edited or anything. And you literally see, the shooting happen. And so, I can remember, I didn't realize till an hour later that it was on Facebook already. But the guy who had it on his phone, he was basically like, "Look, I'll give this to you if you pay me for it." And that doesn't happen often. More times than not, people just give us the video. But we ended up having to make a deal with this guy to get the video. And yeah, without that, how publicized is this trial? You hear about these unfortunate cop shootings all the time, but we live in a world today.
You have to too, as a journalist in that moment, understand the value of that video, because
100%.
You're 99.9% of the times if somebody has a video, you're like, listen, you're not going to pay for it because they want to share it so badly. You know what I mean? Exactly. You don't have to do that. But I could see in that position, like this, whoever has this has an advantage.
Does the whole everybody's somewhat of a journalist, anybody can video something and upload it, anybody can write a Facebook or Twitter post. Does that help local news?
Does it help local news? I think that if some random Joe decides to post a story and tell it in their own way versus people that have been trained and know how to do the job properly, it might have us looking better when we go to tell a story. But we do reach out to those people and say, can we use your video? Can we, do you have any information that we don't know? So we're working with them to a certain extent, but at the same time, we do have to do our own thing. To put it in perspective, just in terms of that one story, without that video, we were going to be showing, a cop car that was sitting there. We were going to be showing yellow tape, and it doesn't put the whole thing into perspective. Whereas you got the video, you can see it for yourself.
Yeah.
So So where you said how you're kind of playing the waiting game now. What are your plans? What's the future hold? You're gonna go. You could go back to Dothan and kind of like a hero's return.
I've had an invitation. not a job offer, but I've had an invitation. Right now I'm taking a lot of time. Fortunately, the unemployment package is somewhat good right now. If the government did something right, they've made it a little bit better for the time being. I'm taking a lot of time to reach out to people that I know just across different industries, different friends and stuff. And, I'm just weighing different options. Maybe we'll have an announcement sometime soon as to something that I could be doing. I'll tell you that it was my decision to leave WFMZ. I made the decision prior to the pandemic. And I thought that there was something in the works that I was going to move on to.
Oh.
And then the company that I was talking to, they said, it's not that we lost interest.
Right.
It's just that we're not hiring right now.
Right.
So that's really what ended up happening.
Do you feel fortunate that you're not in a newsroom covering the pandemic, or do you have that like itch to get back and cover it in a time like this?
Well, I could tell you that I don't miss the stress as of right now. When I started this business, I had hair that looked like George's, and now clearly you can see the business takes a toll on you.
Well, that's another funny thing. Like, do you, when you leave when you're in it, you're in the business of covering news. News obviously is never ending.
Mm-hmm.
So can you ever kind of, are you ever just on your couch on a day off watching, and not kind of engaged in wondering what the next story is? Can you ever really relax?
You have to unplug. You have to.
Yeah.
Look, I can tell you a short story about that. So when I was a sports guy in Alabama, sports was my life. Everything that I did all day long was about sports. And honestly, it made me start to resent sports a little bit, because sports was always, and to the normal person, it's their escape. You do your construction job, you do your teaching job, you come home and you watch sports or you go to a ball game, and it's your way to detach. But when you work in sports all day long, the last thing you want to do when you go home is watch SportsCenter.
Right.
Because it's like, oh my gosh, I just did 9 hours of this.
Yeah.
So I would, you'd watch movies or you'd watch trash TV like the Jersey Shore or something, and which, by the way, is still one of my favorite shows. But yeah, you have to detach in some way. So to go to news, you can't watch it every day. You can get a little bit here or there. You can go on Twitter, but I'm not sitting around on my days off and watching nonstop news coverage. You just can't. You go crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I mean, we'll let you. We'll plug Every Ribbon Counts. That's you're working with them. But before we let you go, kind of inside info. If there's anybody listening that is having a hard time with some of the info that they're getting, whether they think that, you hear it all, that there's agendas or biases or people, what they can believe, and, newscasters are writing things that are, aren't true. As somebody that was in the room, can you give some confidence back to people that are watching that the person that's writing that article or in that story, they're not trying to manipulate you? So what would you say to them?
Yeah. I mean, look, I could just speak from the local news perspective, because that's where my experience is. Look, every day that we go to work, we just want to do our job, and we want to tell stories that are, both factual based and just helping people. I mean, that's why we do it. We go to work to help the people, because we're the ones that are put in charge of getting, your access that the average person doesn't get, to hold public officials accountable, or to just tell feel-good stories. But we have no agenda. We just want to do the best job we can do. And if we're doing that and we happen to get some positive feedback for it, great. But we don't do it for the pat on the back. We do it so that you can make your own determinations.
Yeah, and that responsibility isn't lost on you, right?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. It's something I take a lot of pride in. And for the people that want to say, so-and-so is fake news. Just remember this. Google is forever. And if you do one thing, if you make up one story, if you make up one source of information, that's going to stick with you for the rest of your life. So, for me personally, I'm never going into work saying, boy, if, the story isn't working out the way I want. Maybe if I just make up this one thing for it to be convenient for me this one time, it's going to work out for me and the story is going to be great. Well, guess what? If you get caught, now your whole reputation is shot, and it doesn't matter what line of work you're in for the rest of time. You can't.
Unless you're in our line of work, Tom, nobody cares.
In that case, let me pull up a seat and I'll join the show.
Are we telling the truth? Are we lying? It doesn't matter. It's part of the game.
Look, you guys are – if there's one thing you guys are doing, you're providing a service of comedic relief, and I love it.
It's nice to me. Like I'm saying, this is as much therapy for me as it is spreading the word for other people. It's just been so – like there are days I'm like, I don't want to go on here. I don't want to talk to anybody. And then we do it, and I'm like, I feel a million times better just talking. And that's the same as this. Like I laughed. I feel better.
Yeah.
It's good. I'm going to go have a White Claw. I am ready to rock.
Is that your drink, White Claw?
Yeah. Right now it is, because you can't really gain a lot of weight from it, and it's only like three of those, and I'm out.
When you have 6 of them, it kind of defeats the purpose.
No, I had like 3. I put on a movie. I tell my wife we're gonna watch a movie tonight. I'm out.
I don't know, Josh, if you know, we do like a late night show. Me and 2 other people.
We should have
Facebook
Live.
Call in. I can always tell, and George produces it.
Okay.
I can always tell when George, the producer, has been drinking on the job.
Why? What? I make it better. I'm way more
right, like a heckler at a comedy show. You make it better.
I'm trying to interject some fun into the program. I went back and watched the tapes. We get way better interaction when I've had a White Claw.
Well, sure.
The numbers don't lie.
For some reason they frown upon having news reporters be drunk on TV. But could you imagine if we told stories just like every day?
And that's why this is great. We have asked some news reporters, and you talk about contracts. I think they're not able to do stuff right, so we appreciate that.
Sure.
But we would love to. Maybe after this is over, if we get a chance to talk to some of them and how everything's been, because it's crazy, and it's crazy being out there. So
it's very crazy, and that's kind of the double-edged sword that news reporters have. Like you go to a fire, or you go to a shooting, or there's a pandemic.
You're still there.
We're the ones who say don't go outside your house, but yet we're there.
Yeah, well, that's what I want people – like, I mean, me and George, we're not news, so this isn't the respect for the people. Like, I mean, frontline workers – obviously, but also people kind of forget that you wouldn't know what's going on without that local newscaster, right?
Absolutely.
So you got to keep them in mind too, and they deserve the utmost respect as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, the real heroes are the people that are in the hospitals and the law enforcement. They're obviously the real heroes, but you're absolutely right. You can't forget about the media.
Right, and that's the thing. Like, we don't try to pretend. I don't think anybody's trying to pretend they're more than what we are. Like we're happy if somebody watches it and they have a good time or learn something new, that's fantastic. But yeah, like somebody was saying something the other day, like how does a cop even pull somebody over right now? Every time you do that, you're putting your family potentially at risk. So think about that. Well, I'm up here worried about
how many White Claws you're going to drink.
Yeah, right.
Right.
2.
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
Strict 2.
Keep it under 3, George.
Wait, how much time until Lehigh Valley with Love After Dark? We got a couple hours. You might be in trouble.
What time does this typically start?
6:30.
We hope.
6:30?
Yeah.
It should. Okay. It should go off tonight. We hope. I have to make a run to the store, so you're lucky, Tyler.
Sure.
But all right, hey.
Thank you, man. This is fun.
Josh, thanks so much. Hopefully we'll talk to you again soon, and all the best of luck.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks for giving me the time.
Sure. Talk to you.
All right, guys.